Cageside with John Morgan.
And welcome everybody to another episode of Cageside with John Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. UFC Austin in the books. There is no shortage of things to talk about, shall I say. Arman Tsarukyan, I'm not going to say he shocks the world, but he shocked me in the manner of which he came across as victorious. Deiveson Figueiredo moves up in weight, looks great, takes out a perennial contender on the fringe of a perennial contender, Rob Font. Definitely makes a splash. Sean Brady absolutely steamrolls Kelvin Gastelum, one that I quite frankly was shocked by. We'll dive into that. And Jalin Turner viciously KOs Bobby Green. Unfortunately, that's not what we are talking about today and this week. And we will get into the referee stoppage. I think we have to. To help me break all of this down, his name's on the marquee. You can follow him on Twitter, John_Morgan_MMA. His name is John Morgan. What's up, pal?
Man, what a card that was. I was a little bit, I hated the fact that I had to miss it a little bit. It was a card in Texas. You know, I'm a born and raised Texan, so I love any time the UFC visits there. So I was bummed to miss out. But it turns out I was glad that I wasn't committed to traveling because my kid made it to a regional soccer tournament as team qualified. So if I'm a little tomato-ish right now, don't worry about adjusting your coloring. That's just me. I'm a little bit red right now. This weekend was fun. Got to go travel away to the Arizona border and take in some soccer and enjoy it. But man, what a card that was down in Texas, man. It just highlights. It's so funny as I'm hearing you rattle those off. Like, that's not stretching to make those storylines. I mean, they were all major storylines at the top of this card, man. So what a fun night it was.
I'm going to leave it to you. Where do you want to start? We could start anywhere.
You know what, man? There's controversy, and you're an expert on it, and we got to get to that. But I honestly feel like we would be doing it a little bit of a disservice if we didn't start with Arman Tsarukyan because, as you said, I don't know that he shocked the world, but I think he was a name that a lot of people weren't overly familiar with, and I bet they are now because that dude just inserted himself into the title picture.
I mean, let's be honest. We have probably sang Beneil Dariush's praises more than anybody.
Yeah.
And I was saying, like, it wasn't a matter of if, it was only a matter of when Dariush and Islam were going to meet. And I put that as a toss-up fight. I just thought Dariush, and I still do, Beneil is that good.
Yes, he is.
But to see Arman come out and do what he did, and here's the thing. It wasn't a lucky punch.
No.
The setup and the combination of it was utter just brilliance. It was beautiful. He grabs the tie plum, throws the knee, doesn't necessarily land it, but has enough of a threat to it that Beneil's head had to raise. Boom! The right hand comes over the top, and it is all she wrote.
Unbelievable. And as you said, not a lucky shot. I mean, he set it up. And the speed at which he threw those strikes, right? I mean, this kid is an athlete, man. And how about this? Grappling is probably what he's best at, not striking. And so he delivered that huge, powerful shot, man. I've been impressed from Arman Tsarukyan from the first time I saw him. You know, I believe that he was kind of that guy. And it was just a matter of when. Well, guess what? Matter of when is now. I mean, that dude is at the top of the division, and I think you got to put him in a number one contender fight. I mean, to have that type of performance over a guy like Beneil Dariush, and man, we'll keep talking about this card, but I feel like that was a theme of this card as well, of like kind of heart-wrenching losses. I mean, some of the guys that suffered defeats, you were like, oh, I feel bad for him, because Beneil's that guy that is a great fighter that has always just been a little step short, a little bit under the radar. He doesn't talk trash. He refuses to really call people out because
dad bod makes us
kind of got the
about ourselves.
Turned gray at like 25 years old or something, so it makes him look like he's older than he is. But I mean, one of the nicest human beings on the planet. I mean, sets up schools for like underprivileged children with money out of his pocket. I mean, that's the guy he is. So such a quality dude that doesn't get the respect he deserves. And we talked about it going in, right? This was kind of that big crossroads moment. Like, are you still going to be relevant in the title picture? Because he was always a little bit under the radar, And then he got there and he had the loss. And this was his opportunity to kind of gain it back. And instead, the door got slammed in his face in emphatic fashion. So a heartbreaker for Beneil Dariush, but Arman Tsarukyan is that guy. He's that guy. I mean, you know, I tweeted immediately after the fight. I'm like, man, him and Islam in Abu Dhabi would be incredible. Now, it's not going to happen next. But can you imagine those two, who, by the way, we talked about it going in. A lot of people not realize have fought before. They do have a history together.
Arman's UFC debut all the way back in 2019, and it was a unanimous decision win for Islam Makhachev, but he's only got 2 losses in the UFC. I'm going to put you on the spot right now. Do you know who they are? He's 21-3, I believe it is. 21. He is. 2 of his losses came in the UFC, debuted in 2019 in April, one being it Islam Makhachev. We just said the other one is who?
Well, he'll tell you it's nobody because he thinks he won that fight, and a lot of people do. But Mateusz Gamrot, he lost to Mateusz Gamrot as well in a fight that, by the way, a lot of people think he won that fight. He's not. It's not just him. You know, sometimes you have fights where guys like, I won that, and you kind of look at him and you go like, I don't know what you did. But this was a close one, man. This is one that he had a real case to say that he was victorious. So yeah, 2 top a champion and a top contender, and the top contender was a controversial one, and a loss to the champ was in his debut. And I love the fact that he said afterwards, oh, by the way, remember the first time we fought? I was 23 years old. I was a baby. I was in the UFC. I was just starting. Now I'm 27. Give me another shot at it. And I think he's probably going to have to win one more fight. You know, I do think Charles Oliveira is still going to get that shot that he was promised. I think the UFC, you know, they've been in the Charles Oliveira business for a long time. I know they appreciate what he brings to the table, and I think he's earned that shot. So I think you do that next. But, man, now you're talking about Arman Tsarukyan against maybe Justin Gaethje, something like that.
I could show you my notes, right? And I said Arman versus, and I literally have a question mark because, you know, a lot of times our back and forth goes like this. I take the pragmatic approach and being like, well, A beat, you know, fighter A beat fighter B and fighter C beat fighter D. So, you know, A and C need to fight each other. And you always, in your infinite wisdom of covering the UFC and knowing how their playbook is drawn, you go, yeah, but, and it usually pans out that you are right. It's not necessarily just going through rankings. So now I'm going to flip this back on you. If you're the UFC, now this is no disrespect on Arman, right? Do you think he has the name value to go up against, say, a Dustin Poirier or go up against, say, a Justin Gaethje? Because he is a legitimate threat and a danger, and I don't know if those guys want to fight him. Not that they're scared, but is he that name enough for them that's going to do the business that, you know, that a Dustin Poirier or a Justin Gaethje wants? But it's the logical step. But those guys' profile is so high. Does that fight, is that the co-main of an event in a pay-per-view that's really going to send that ticker up to the next level? Are you following what I'm saying?
Can I tell you first how it warms my heart that I'm bringing you over to the business side of things, right? You're really starting to see how the UFC thinks, and I love that. And you bring up a great point, too, and I love that you said it because you said it the right way. When we talk about guys not wanting to fight somebody, and you'll see the casual fans, it's because he's scared to fight him. There's not a man or a woman on the UFC roster that is afraid to fight anybody else. But there are situations where, well, it just doesn't make sense because I'm trying to make as much revenue as possible. I'm trying to get as much attention as possible. And you do bring up a good point. I don't think Arman Tsarukyan is necessarily that guy yet, but I feel like he's getting to be that guy, right? I mean, with performances like that, he's taken the time to learn English, right? Which he didn't when he first came in the UFC, but he's really working on it so he can communicate with the audience, right? He's an incredible athlete, good-looking dude, well-spoken. So I think he has the ability to be that guy. But it is a unique situation right now because, you know, I was looking off to the side over here for anybody that might be watching on video. I was looking on the side because I was pulling up my rankings because I sent in my rankings. I now have Arman Tsarukyan at number 4 in the UFC rankings. We'll see when they officially come out if he's in that position. But I have, of course, Islam Makhachev as the champ. I have Charles Oliveira number 1, Justin Gaethje number 2, Dustin Poirier number 3, Arman Tsarukyan number 4. I only dropped Beneil Dariush to number 5. And then you kind of get down below it. Now, you do have the Mateusz Gamrot at 6, which he could argue that he should be above him, but I don't know. This was an emphatic victory, not a close decision win. So I'll outline all that to say that I honestly would like to see the fight with Justin Gaethje. Dustin Poirier, they train together in American Top Team, so I don't know. There's not enough on the line. Like, I feel like Dustin Poirier is in a position where he doesn't need to. You know, it's not like...
And I don't mean to cut you off, but you know, now we're talking ourselves in a, because I agree with you,
but
but we're talking ourselves in a circle, because if we rewind, you know what, a couple months ago, we're saying, Justin, you don't need to take another fight. You're next in line for the title shot after Charles.
Oh, I know.
Islam. So that just poses a huge problem, in my opinion, for Arman, because if I was advising Dustin, no, you're not taking that fight.
Right.
If I was advising, Justin, hell no, you're not taking that fight. And guess what, Charles? Hell no, you're waiting. No matter what, you're waiting for that title shot. How do you build that name against guys like me and you know the savage killer that he really is? But do those, I don't know, those casuals, we know that this is a for-profit business.
See, man, you're laying it out so well, because you're right. You know, I'm looking at the fight I want to see is Justin Gaethje, but you're right. I don't know that Justin Gaethje takes that. I saw a lot of people throwing out the Michael Chandler name because we still don't know what's going on with Conor McGregor. But if I'm advising Michael Chandler, I'm saying, bro, you already waited this long. Keep waiting. You know what I mean? It's not worth it to fight this dude that's not going to get you near the recognition. Again, not that you're afraid, not that you wouldn't fight him, but let's be honest, the dollars that you would make against Arman Tsarukyan versus Conor McGregor, those are different stratospheres. But then if you start going down the rankings, then you start looking at, well, wait, do you fight Rafael Fiziev? I mean, do you wait for Dan Hooker to come back? I mean, and that's no disrespect to those guys, but I just feel like with this performance and this victory, Arman Tsarukyan is a little bit higher. I hate to say this, but as I sit there and I listen to what you're saying, because I think you're spot on with it, I wonder if maybe a Mateusz Gamrot rematch is what happens next, right? A controversial decision. Both of them are kind of on the outside looking in. They're not those big names. Maybe you take them over to Europe somewhere and headline a card there. I wonder if that might end up being what's in the cards. It's a tough spot, man. It's crazy, because until you laid it out like that, I hadn't really thought it. I was so blown away by the performance that I thought, man, this is the moment that this guy breaks through. But now that I look at the way that everybody else is in the positions that they're in, I'm not so sure anymore.
In a weird way, it's man, I swear you're like impacting my brain, because it was the first thing I thought of.
That's funny.
Outside of like, man, why'd you do that to my boy?
It warms my heart. It warms my heart that the process is changing.
Yeah, it was the first thing that thought, because we already said, Justin, don't do ish until. And you know what? Like in a weird way, like if Islam wanted to stand and strike or whatever, I'm not saying it's a winnable fight, but I think it's a decent enough matchup for Justin Gaethje that he can possibly pull off an upset there against Islam. You know what I mean? Because me and you both know the size of these guys, and Justin Gaethje is a massive 155er. So it's not like he'd be giving up size at 55 to Islam, like most 55ers are giving up a lot of size to Islam.
It's crazy, man. There's a lot of opportunities up there at the top that those guys just can't give away. Like I said, Charles Oliveira is already in there. The shot's been promised. I think he stays there. And you're right, Gaethje has nothing to prove. Again, I don't think Poirier's taking the fight because it's his teammate, but there's nothing to prove as well. If it was his teammate and there was something to prove, but Dustin Poirier, I mean, he can do whatever he wants the rest of his life. And we all know what it is. He's a made
guy. He's a made man.
That's it, man. He's a G, and we all know that. So the more it may sound crazy, but and look, Gamrot holds his victory over Tsarukyan, but I don't think anybody's giving Gamrot that type of praise and that type of love either. You know what I'm saying? So maybe the rematch, as weird as that sounds, is the most logical situation for both of these. And it sounds terrible to say like a rematch of a fight that happened not that long ago, you know, because it's like there's all these guys in the division. Yeah, and there's all these fresh matchups available, but I just think those big names probably don't want the matchup right now. So, man, it's going to be really interesting matchmaking, because that was an incredible performance, and in a main event, no less. I mean, it wasn't just, you know, a random fight on a card. I mean, this was the guy. You know what I mean? This was the guy that everybody was looking at. This was the fight that everybody was paying attention to, and he delivered like that. But now there's almost in my head, I wanted the Justin Gaethje, but you're right. I don't think he's going to take it. There's not a big what's next.
Do you think your boy Ali is going to let him take that fight?
No. No, and I don't think Justin Gaethje wants that fight. You know what I mean? Like, I think Justin Gaethje, because he said it from the beginning, right?
He's Justin Gaethje's manager, just to clarify out there.
That's right. Dominant MMA, Ali Abdelaziz. I don't see him necessarily wanting that fight, right? Because, you know, Justin Gaethje said, I only have, you know, a handful of fights left. Like, I only want the biggest names available. And is Arman Tsarukyan, you know, and again, this is where it gets down to the business side of things versus the sports side of things, right? Because from the sports side of things, I think that's absolutely the fight to make, man. I mean, Justin Gaethje's not, you know, he's waiting on his title shot. He's sitting there. He's that upper echelon guy. Like I said, I have Tsarukyan at 4, Poirier at 3 is his teammate. He's not going to fight him, so you go to number 2. That's the fight to make. But Gaethje knows he's only got a handful of fights left, and he wants the biggest names possible. He wants the biggest paydays possible, of course, but he wants to build a legacy out as well as he can. So I don't see them wanting that fight unless the UFC just comes with some money. But then we just said it. Tsarukyan, in terms of moving the needle, is not that guy popular. So why would the UFC bring the huge truckload of cash to make this matchup? So, man, he's in a more difficult spot than I thought he was going to be in, man.
What in the world happened in the hotel this week? What was that all about?
The host hotel had some chaos going on, right? Some hallway interactions, man. It's that was weird, man.
What the genesis of this was?
I really don't, to be honest.
I don't think anybody does, and
I don't know where it started from. I don't know where it started from, man. Unless it's I don't know. I mean, Bobby Green is kind of you know, labeled Russians as a whole, you know, and saying that they're all cheating, or basically. So I mean, maybe it was that upset him a little bit, but I don't really know where the genesis of it came from, unless it's that, you know what I mean? But I've never heard Arman really offer that he's pissed off at that guy. Maybe it's just an opportunity because they were together. He felt like he should say something, but they certainly had some incidents this week.
Yeah, maybe just cranky from cutting weight. You saw a guy like, I just inherently don't like him. I'm going to say something. That is very feasible.
I think, yeah, I don't think Arman, not that he's huge, I don't think he has the easiest weight cuts always. It seems like to me like he has some tough ones. So, yeah, he might have just been cranky, man. Fighters on weight cut, they get a little cranky from time to time.
They get a little cranky. All right. Where are we going next?
Well, should we go Bobby Green? Because I said we have controversy, we have a discussion point, and we have an expert on the subject in you, a licensed referee. So maybe I think this is something we talk about. I would have felt bad starting there because I feel like you got to give Arman Tsarukyan his due, but I think this is probably the second biggest, if not the biggest talking point coming out of the weekend, if we're being honest.
Unfortunately, it's the biggest talking point, but we wouldn't be, but we have too much respect for the game to lead with that. We got to lead with Arman and his performance. Yep. But it is the biggest talking point coming out of it. As everybody probably knows by now, Jalin Turner knocks out Bobby Green in the first round, and then that's where, or when he hits the ground, that's when the controversy starts. A late stoppage by veteran and very well respected referee Kerry Hatley, and one who I have to put this disclaimer out, one that I have great affinity for, that I tremendously respect, and a peek behind the curtains. A lot of refs are cool with each other, but at the same time, people want those bigger spots, and everybody does hyperanalyze the other people. But I can tell you, Kerry Hatley is not one of those guys. He has opened the doors for me, right? And he has talked me through situations. And there's not a lot of guys like that in this industry. that will do that, and he is one of them. So when I talk about all this, I want you to know the great admiration and respect that I do have for Kerry Hatley.
I respect that you put that out there, man. I respect that you lay that out there because it is true. And that's true in any industry, right? If you got a bunch of people that are all looking for a select few spots, I think you can really tell people's character by whether they're able to reach a hand out and help it, or if they try to pull everything tight because they're trying to safeguard everything for themselves, which is understandable. Self-preservation is a human tactic, right? I mean, you get it. But when you have people that understand that they're so confident in themselves, in their position, and their abilities that they're willing to help others out, that's when you know that's a true good human being. And I agree with you. I think Kerry Hatley is one of those guys.
So Jalin Turner catches Bobby Green. Off the top of my head, I think it was a temple shot, right?
Right.
So it was a temple shot, which wobbles the legs of Bobby Green. He does the walk it out. Now walk it out. Falls, right? And then the brutality starts from there. Very, whether it be well documented or loudly documented by the commentary team of Michael Bisping and Daniel Cormier, this was a tremendously late stoppage in vastly everybody's opinion. What did you, first glance, what did you think of the stoppage?
I thought it was a late stoppage, and I still feel that way, right? I don't think there's any argument about whether or not it was a late stoppage. I think it definitely was. I think where the question falls is the severity of just how late it was, because I'll be honest with you, I was watching it. You know, I told you this weekend I was traveling. I was on the road. I was at my kid's soccer tournament. We were going to dinner. So I was watching this thing, this whole card on my phone, whether it be, you know, on a soccer sideline or in a restaurant or whatever. So I was watching it with no commentary. So I heard it with no audio to begin with, just video, right? Because I didn't want it to, you know, drown out people around me or that sort of thing. And I thought to myself, late stoppage, you know? And it was only after, you know, I got done with hanging out with the family and got online that I saw just how irate everybody was. And I think the commentary had something to do with it. And I'll be honest with you, from watching it for the first time, I had a very rare situation that I watched it with no commentary to begin with. I felt like the severity of it might have been a little bit overblown, if I'm being honest with you. Certainly 2 late shots. There's no question about it. There's 2 punches at the end of that series that did not need to happen. But that is also the moment that Bobby Green went unconscious. And so I do think it was a late stoppage, but I know I may be in the minority here, but I didn't think it was potentially as egregious as all the people I saw online that were like, Kerry Hatley never deserves the referee again and take this guy out and what's he doing? I thought it was late, but I didn't think it was potentially as severe maybe as what a lot of people were seeming to suggest online. So I'm curious, again, as somebody who officiates at the highest level, a licensed referee, not just an observer like me, I'm kind of curious what your observation was.
I understand this thought process. I'll start there. I've always said that there are kind of a process that you go through, and that in reality you are trained to go through when stopping a fight, right? So, you know, as we said, if there's a submission in, obviously the tap is easy. You see the tap, you stop the fight. You don't see the arm. If the arm's trapped in, then there's a whole protocol that you kind of need to go down. Same thing with a ground and pound finish. Because even though this was labeled as a KO, the KO was a result of the ground and pound. Okay? And kind of the process goes there. And he said, or kind of the process starts when he hits the ground and you're in danger, and the person is in danger of me, the referee, or in this case, Kerry Hatley, stopping the fight. Fighter, you need to move. Fighter, protect yourself. Fighter, I am going to stop this fight. Very rarely will a punch just happen. A ground and pound actually should never happen where there's no verbalization of things going on. I want to start with saying it was a late stoppage. I have messaged back and forth with Kerry Hatley. He acknowledges it is a late stoppage. Let's take that and put it to the side right now. The key question is, how late of a stoppage is it? Was it a pure disregard of any institutional knowledge of being a referee? And I can tell you definitively the answer to that is no. It was not that late where it was pure negligence of knowing what to do. I can tell you that with 100-degree certainty. So much is that we were talking before we started recording, and you were literally watching and I was talking, and what I was saying was reinforced by what you were watching at the time. I implore everybody, turn the volume off. Go back and watch it with a clear mind. On 2 separate occasions, I see Bobby Green post with one arm while blocking with another and try to get up.
Yep.
Now, he was not successful. He wasn't even close to successful. But as our verbal cues go as a referee, fighter, change your position. Fighter, you need to move. Fighter, protect yourself or I'm going to stop the fight. Now, I couldn't hear because it was so damn loud in that building. But if those were the words coming out of Kerry Hatley's mouth, which I can almost assure you were his words, then Bobby Green was trying to do exactly what Kerry Hatley was asking him to do. Now, now we're going to get into the difference of, regardless of all of that, at what point does the fighter not need to take any more damage?
Yeah, and that's very true, right? But there was, and you did a great job of walking through the thought process because you've been in that position, and I think too about some of the stoppages you and I have talked about together, over the time of this podcast, and what we talk about often is that glassy-eyed look, right? That's when that fighter is not here anymore, right? And unfortunately, Kerry Hatley didn't have that benefit, right? And it wasn't because he was out of position. I mean, we're talking about bang-bang sequence of events. They go from the feet to the ground. Jalin Turner takes the back mount and is just delivering like nasty shots. And Kerry Hatley is where he is. And unfortunately, there's just nothing he can observe at that point. So he didn't even get the benefit of that. And so I think you're spot on here, man. And listen, I just feel like people are being a little bit too unfair with this situation because, Kerry Hatley is doing what he needs to do. As you said, he's going through the process. And man, let's be honest. I mean, what do you think Bobby Green says? Now, again, you touched on it. You're there to protect the fighters, right? The fighters sometimes won't even protect themselves from themselves. They'll put themselves in harm's way, right? I mean, just by nature of what they do for a living, they're putting themselves in harm's way. So somebody's got to make good decisions. But the number of early stoppages we've had and the complaints you get after that, and the fighters will tell you, and how many locker rooms have you been in, man? And you're given instructions or whether, and the fighters say, please just let me fight. Don't stop my fight early. Like, let me fight out of a situation. Please, I'm imploring you. Let me do that. And I feel like that's what Kerry Hatley was doing. Bobby Green, we're not talking about an amateur that has to go back to work on Monday. We're not talking about a guy in his professional debut that is a little overwhelmed and doesn't know what to do. We're talking about a 50-fight veteran who has been in there with the baddest of the bad and is, as you said, putting his hand up. Now, is it the greatest defense? No, but is at least trying to stop it. As you said, posting is, it's not his hand on the mat, but he's getting his forearm and trying to build up. You know what I mean? So it's like he's going through those things. I actually applaud Kerry Hatley for letting the fighter work out of the situation. And I can say that and also say I think the last 2 punches were a little bit late. But again, we're talking about Go watch that in real time. By the way, if you're going to watch it back and evaluate it, don't watch it in slow motion. Do not watch it in slow motion because that is entirely unfair. Watch it in real time. Watch how fast it happens. It's a bang-bang situation. I think Kerry Hatley was just a touch late on it, but I don't think he's as late as everybody's trying to make it out to be.
See, I believe that Kerry Hatley, in full transparency, was about 4 punches too late.
Okay.
Because now, it's not the egregiousness that is being talked about, right? It's a bad late stoppage. 4 punches. God knows I've been there, right? Now, I haven't been there at that level, thankfully. But if my career keeps going the way, I guarantee you I will.
Yep.
Because that stuff just happens.
It's inevitable.
Right? But for me, where I would have liked to see the fight ended is the first time he tries to post while blocking, he takes a couple more shots and he goes down again. That's where I would have liked it. And I think if I were to go back and talk to Kerry Hatley specifically, I can almost assure you that's where he would have pinpointed he was going to do it. But it happened, to your point, it happened so fast, right? So So it becomes, did he go through the checklist? Because I know some people are going to kind of twist my words here. Yes, I think Kerry Hatley was doing the right thing. I think that Bobby Green was listening to the commands and trying to follow them. But then that becomes the question of, even though A, B, C, and D are all being met, meaning all the commands are being met by both referee and fighter, at what point do you just say enough is enough? I know you're trying hard.
Yeah.
And that's when I think falling that first time when tried to post wide blocking, that's all the reason I say that. And that is definitely the benefit of hindsight being 2020.
Yeah, and again, as you know, I mean, this sport is so fast-paced, and this series especially is fast-paced. Jalin Turner was wailing away. The speed of those punches. It's funny because I hadn't thought about it, but I'm replaying the sequence in my mind right now, and I think you hit it spot on. The perfect stoppage would have been the moment he goes back flat that first time, right? Because he was probably out briefly at that point. Now, Kerry Hatley doesn't go in at that point, and he builds back. So with future punch, had Kerry Hatley gone in after that, after he's back again, that might have been a situation where Bobby pops up and goes, "What? What are we talking about? I'm trying to go at it," which just goes to show you how difficult it is to do. So, yeah, you know what I like about this discussion is the fact that I think you're breaking it down scientifically, which is, I think, a failure that doesn't happen a whole lot, and also breaking it down from a position of actually being there. I think the thing that really frustrated me also about seeing it is the number of people that were just so quick to be like, get that guy out of there. That guy should never referee again. That guy is, like, I hate that because, and it's not just because of my friendship with you or our podcast that we do together. I mean, I've known officials over the years for a long time being around the sport and how much they care. And there seems to be this, this scenario, and we've heard people say like, oh, they just go home and they never think about it again. You know what I mean? They don't care. They just show up, collect a paycheck, do what they got to do, and leave. And I know that's not true. And I know how much officials beat themselves up over it. And man, how about the fact that even Dana White over the years has taken shots at officials, and sometimes very fairly so. You know what I mean? He's not afraid to express his opinion. But for him to even say, I talked to Kerry, and Kerry feels bad about this, and he's incredibly remorseful about it. And I just think people are so quick to be like, that dude should never referee again. And I don't think they're thinking about what they're saying. If you want to break it down and you say that ref needs to be educated on the process, that ref needs to not do a main event for a little while he trains again, or whatever the case be, all those are fair. But I just saw so many people on social media that were just like, that dude sucks and he should never do another fight again. I'm like, that's not fair for what is essentially a bang-bang situation. It happened quick. He was a little bit late, not as egregious as I think a lot of people made it out to be. And then to say the guy should never do it again. Like, man, if that was the case, like, none of us should probably do any of our jobs, right? Like, you're going to tell me, anybody in any position out there hasn't had a bad day or made a mistake.
Yeah, you ain't never asked a stupid question before, John Morgan?
I have definitely asked some stupid questions over the years. You know what I'm saying? And if they'd have pulled me, fortunately, I've just been doing it so long. They're like, he's a good guy. We know what he did.
He tries hard.
Yeah, don't worry about him. He didn't mean that. Yeah, you have one bad question, all of a sudden, like, you can never be a journalist ever again. Like, come on, man. So I thought people were being a little bit too hard, if I'm being honest.
And now I do got to clarify one other point, because the last high-profile reffing controversy that we really broke down was Mark Goddard's stoppage of Aljamain Sterling versus Sean O'Malley. And I said when the fighter turned away, when O'Malley turned away, that was the indication for the referee to jump in and stop the fight. The disclaimer where the differences are too, because I can already see people saying, well, hey, you said O'Malley turned his back and the fight would stop. Bobby Green did that right away. The difference is here is that Bobby Green turned away on, like, immediately. It knocked him down into that position. Whereas where Aljamain Sterling,
yep.
He got knocked down, tried to play like a wide open guard, and took 15, 16 unanswered punches, then rolled and showed his back. That's the differences between the two. It was the different ways in which guys were trying to escape it or not take as much damage from it. So what that stoppage and this one, we're not an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, it's a disclaimer worth making, right? Because it is fair, because if somebody was going to assess the analysis on both, they could bring at that point. But there's a difference between falling and being face down and your back exposed versus falling, looking face up and then turning away because you're trying to get away from the danger at that point. You know what I mean? But Bobby Green was already in that position. So I think it's a good point.
Short notice, Jalin Turner comes away, vicious knockout. Nobody's talking about how, good he looked against Bobby freaking Green, man.
Yeah, you're so right. That is a shame that when you get into the controversies, all of a sudden you forget about what you really should be praising, which was walking in that fight on short notice. And Jalin Turner, look, man, he had kind of some concerning statements earlier in the week about, I kind of felt like I didn't really have a choice. I kind of had to be here, and almost didn't make weight, made it on his second attempt. And so I think there were a lot of people who are like, "Oh, this is just not going to look good. This is not a great situation." And then, my goodness, I mean, he looked absolutely phenomenal and dangerous, man. That dude is dangerous. So great performance from Jalin Turner. And you're right. No matter where you stand on Kerry Hatley, no matter where you stand on the way this sequence played out, don't take away from Jalin Turner, man, because he stepped in a very difficult situation against a stud of an opponent, Bobby Green, and looked sensational.
I can tell you this. If my son gets into fighting one day, Kerry Hatley is going to be on the short list of refs that I would want to ref my son's fight. And that is an honest to God fact.
And you can't say it any better than that, man. That's if you're putting your son's health and safety in somebody's hands and you trust them to do so, that is a huge statement of trust.
I think Kerry Hatley is a phenomenal referee. I hate that he's in this spot. I hate that he did not jump in on that first collapse after Bobby Green tried to post up. I know that Kerry Hatley hates that he did not jump in right there, but in a weird way, I saw the thought process. I talked to other refs. Today, and we are all kind of on the same page where, it was late, but he was telling him to move. We can all see that Bobby Green was moving a little bit. I'm not going to it wasn't as it was bad because the optics too, the huge boom, right? I mean, everything about that just looked horrible, and the commentary compounded it.
Yeah, and because he ended up unconscious like right at the end, and so it just really, it just compounded everything. But I think it was built up a little bit too much. And I hate, the calls to get this guy out of the sport or don't let it, man. Like, officials care, man. And I know, obviously, man, I mean, you care, but you see it, man. Your peers too, they care, man.
Not on his face when he was raising the hands.
Yep.
I just felt so bad for Kerry Hatley in that position, man. Another prominent ref after my Contender Series fight gave me a call that night. One name that everybody would know. I'm not going to say it here, but he gave me a call that night. He said, "Hey, man, I'm really proud of you. You showcased your skills and you're at where we all knew you were going to get. And hopefully it's just a while before you're the one that gets sacrificed. Because every card, a ref or an official gets sacrificed. And I just hope it's not you for a while."
That was awesome and insightful.
You really look at it, man. There's even a little controversy becomes big controversy. This, that, and that's what's like. So there's an element of truth to that. And I think Kerry Hatley is a good enough judge, good enough ref. And I think the true fighters know that he's a good enough ref, and so they're not going to have any problem with him reffing their fights.
Nah, I don't think so. And again, I guarantee you most fighters would appreciate the fact that, again, he let Bobby Green try to fight out of the situation. Don't stop it. Again, you're there to protect them. Sometimes you got to protect them from themselves, but he tried to let him fight out of the situation. So, and again, hey, look, when you criticize, if you're going to be the guy that criticizes early stoppages, just understand, if you're not stopping it early, you may end up stopping it a little bit late. And so that's just the reality of the situation.
And when, and as Dana White said famously, Saturday night, he said some refs come up with dumb excuses on why they did something. Kerry Hatley didn't. He owned up to it. It was late. In my messages with him, it was late. I aim to be better and not make those mistakes again.
Much respect. What more can you ask for? That's it, man. It's not what you do in life, how you react to it.
He's a high integrity man. That's the type of people we need in those spots. Sucks it happened. Let's move on. Listen, I want to glaze over just the Figueiredo moving up to bantamweight, taking out Rob Font. That's a huge win in that division. Rob Font, has been on a losing streak 4 of his last 5, I believe it is.
Yep.
So it's not, Figueiredo isn't an instant title contender, but now he's in a position, correct me if I'm wrong, where he's a fight away or maybe 2 fights away from, he's not in a number 1 contender fight yet, but he's a fight away from being in a number 1 contender fight. Is that right?
I agree. And by the way, let me just say, I'm glad we're kind of burning through this one because I don't want to take anything away from Deiveson Figueiredo, but I think I know what that means we're going to next, which it blew me away. But you're absolutely right. This is a big win. Rob Font's had some losses, but he's a stud. Deiveson Figueiredo, former champ, that carries some title in, some weight in itself. But this was a big win. You're going to see him break into the bantamweight rankings. I would assume he'd be somewhere in the top 10, 8, 9, somewhere around there. But I don't think he's going to be straight into a number 1 contender match. And that's just such a deep division. I mean, there's so many talented fighters at the top of it. But yeah, 1, maybe 2 fights away at worst, depending on what the matchups are, from being able to challenge for a bantamweight title as well. So this was great because, as we said, there's always question marks when you move up a weight class or you move down, whatever it is, when you change. How does your body handle it? He looked good, man. He looked really, really good. It was a solid win. It was a good win.
Veteran performance.
Veteran performance, man. It was really good. He proved that he does belong at 35. And I think that was the question. It's like, does he belong? And he fought a contender right away. He didn't fight, just some guy on the roster. Like, he fought a ranked contender right away and looked phenomenal. So he deserves to be at 35. And it was a great win. And I don't want to take away from it, but that leaves us with the next performance that just, again, blew my mind. And I can't wait to talk about that.
Sean freaking Brady. How damn impressive was that? It was so impressive that it made Beneil Muhammad so much better in my mind now.
Right.
That's one thing that I was thinking about is like, how good is Muhammad?
Man, you're absolutely right about that. I think people got to give him a little bit more respect after, the fact that he's the only man to beat Sean Brady. This was an interesting one for me. Too. Oh, unbelievable. So, I mentioned that this card was, a series of heartbreaks for me, right? I mean, Bobby Green, obviously, that was a tough one to watch. I love that guy, man. I mean, Beneil Dariush, an amazing guy. Rob Font, obviously a good dude. I mean, Kelvin Gastelum, the guys don't get any better than that, right? The dude's been in some wars. I mean, his fight with Israel Adesanya is one of the greatest fights in UFC history. I mean, unbelievable. And just an all-around good dude.
On tough to win it. Very last pick.
Bro, I'll never forget. I've told this story before, but I'll tell it to you real quick. That was back in the time where we used to go interview the cast of The Ultimate Fighter before it would air. And then we interviewed the cast, and I interviewed Kelvin. And I remember leaving that day after interviewing him, like, that poor dude has no chance whatsoever. Like, he's going to get destroyed. And he ends up winning the whole season, right? And he's had some great lessons. I mean, he's been some amazing moments. And to make the decision to go back down to 170, which was a total lifestyle change for him. It wasn't just, I'll cut weight the week of. It was a total lifestyle change. So to come in and have that optimism and make that commitment to yourself and your career to go down to 170 and then to come out and just get utterly dominated by Sean Brady, I know that's such a disappointment for Kelvin Gastelum, but it just goes to show you how good Sean Brady is. On the other hand, Sean Brady, a guy that came through the CFFC, obviously I got a lot of ties to that organization and a lot of love for anybody that comes through there. And so I got a lot of love for Sean Brady, but I think a lot of people are ready to kind of jump off the bandwagon after he lost, right? And to come out and have a performance like this. And by the way, to get the finish. And I thought that was so key, right? Because he was dominant, but just dominating somebody en route to a decision victory, you might go, yeah, but what did you really do? You just wrestled. Hey, if you don't like me wrestling, stop me from wrestling, okay? How about that? That's number one. But number two, to get the finish on top of that, man, I thought really sealed how good of a performance that was. It wasn't just cruise to a decision win. It's no, I'm going to continue to take you out of your element because I know you can absolutely bang with the best of them on the feet. I'm going to dominate you on the ground where I have the best chance to win. And then I'm going to put you away in the end of it as well. Just you can't do it any better than Sean Brady did.
Few things that struck me with that fight. He was never in danger on his feet. I don't think he got hit at all, really. And let's not forget, round number 2, might have been 2 or 1. He sat down Gastelum with a jab, right? So Kelvin never got close to getting off any real combos or any real shots. That's number 1, what surprised me. Number 2, the ease in which he took down Kelvin. it was almost like, I don't want to say that Kelvin wasn't there, but it was so easy. The takedowns were so easy. One takedown was throwing a naked kick that he just caught, took him down. One, he sat him down with a jab. Kelvin got up after that. He just didn't double legs him easily. Then in round number 3, just straight up, boom, done. Easy takedown. It was the ease in which it happened.
I think it just goes to show you how strong Sean Brady is as a human being, right? Because there's no way. I mean, I wasn't in training camp, but I just can't imagine that Kelvin Gastelum walked into this fight not thinking that Sean Brady was going to shoot on him. You know what I mean? There's no way. He had to have been drilling that. He had to have been readying himself for it. You know, it's one thing if you walk into a fight with like Israel Adesanya or Alex Pereira, and, you know, Alex Pereira shoots on you and you're like, I haven't drilled takedowns in 3 months. Like, I didn't think there was any way we were doing this. He had to have been drilling it. He had to have been fresh in it. I think it just goes to show you the power that Sean Brady has. As you said, he's able to just wrap you up and sit you down, man. I mean, just a great statement performance.
And the flowy nature and with how he moved when he was on top, it was just beautiful. It was damn near poetry on the ground. And like what I say about that is like a lot of grapplers and people who watch a lot of grapplers, you know, where a lot of times scrambles, especially wrestlers, where they can out scramble people is because their hips are really fast, right? So they're switching their hips a lot. Good, and then really good jiu-jitsu grapplers and really good wrestlers know, hey, I'm just going to follow his hips everywhere he goes. He rolls this way. I'm just going to, essentially we call it like surfing. I'm just going to surf on top of his hips. So I'm not going to try and statically stay this position. He moves, my hips move with his hips. And every time he got the back, it was from Kelvin being in a bad spot, jerking really hard, moving his hips, and Brady I'm just going to follow your hips. Oh, seatbelt, bottom hook is in. I got your back.
Unbelievable. Just a great performance. You know, I was smiling as you were describing. You do such a great job of describing the techniques and the technicalities of things, because it was making me think of all the great high-level college wrestling that I've been able to watch this year with Match Day, right? The CFFC Match Day product. Because, you know, obviously I've been a lifelong MMA guy, and you see the wrestling when you're having to worry about strikes and when you're having to worry about all the positions. So obviously they don't move in the same way. They're not trying to accomplish the same things, and they're worried about different tools. But you talk about it, man, those high-level quick scrambles and the flows, it's unbelievable. And Sean Brady, man, he just has shown how good he is in those positions in mixed martial arts for sure, man. The dude's a real deal. And I think a lot of people are jumping off the bandwagon. I know a lot of people are high on him. And then he had the setback, and, you know, before that, he had the broken nose situation and kind of fatigue set in, and he had some issues. And I think a lot of people were ready to say he's not that guy. I think he is that guy, man. I think he is that guy. And this was a great performance. And so I'm happy for him. I'm equally curious to know what Kelvin Gastelum does next. Because, again, this was a lot of sacrifices, right? To get back down to 170 and then to have a performance like that. Now, granted, Kelvin's a mentally strong dude, but I think it would be real easy to be like, why did I even do that? What was even the point of me going through all these sacrifices to go out there and lose like that? You know, I'll just go back to middleweight and I'll just go, you know, slang him and see what happens. So I'm going to be really interested to see where his head's at and kind of what he decides to do, because this is a gut check moment in your career, right? I mean, do you keep that commitment to being at 170 that you had? Do you continue making those sacrifices? And I think he should, to be honest with you. I think he's better suited for 170. I think it was just a tough stylistic matchup, and Sean Brady's that good. So I hope that Kelvin can, you know, step back and see that as well.
In the frame, his frame is a 170 frame. So he needs to stay there if he chooses to keep going. Is he in that upper echelon spot moving forward? No. Just frankly, no. Can he get there again one day? Maybe. But Kelvin might not be old, but he's been fighting a long time, and there are a lot of miles on that body. And you know what they say, Father Time is undefeated.
Man, when you're at the highest level, it's one thing to be, you know, fighting for a decade or whatever, right? I mean, that's, as you know, just to be a mixed martial artist for 10 years or so is huge in itself. But when you consider the fact that he's, you know, 10 years, 11 years now at the highest level of the game, I mean, that's about the Ultimate Fighter 17 in 2012.
I just
man.
pulled up his Sturdog profile. Good Lord. Do you have his profile in front of you?
I just pulled it up. Yeah, I pulled it up on top.
Names. Let's start at, I don't know, Uriah Hall. It's a good, the Ultimate Fighter 17.
I mean, look, you're talking about Uriah Hall. I mean, but I mean, that's where he started, which is crazy when you think about how great Uriah has been and how dangerous he is. But yeah, I mean, you just start going through these names like Jake Ellenberger, who's a stud. I think a lot of the new fans.
His third UFC fight.
Rick Story's there. I mean, and then you start, and then it gets crazy after that. I mean, that's kind of the early days. Then you start going to Tyron Woodley, Nate Marquardt, Neil Magny, Johnny Hendricks, Tim Kennedy, Vitor Belfort, Chris Wyman, Michael Bisping, Jacare Souza, Israel Adesanya, Darren Till, Jack Hermanson, Ian Heinisch, Robert Whittaker, Jared Cannonier, Chris Curtis, Sean Brady. Those are all consecutive, by the way. That wasn't cherry picking any along the way. That is
absolutely insane.
That's nuts.
Honestly, I didn't look up I knew he had a crazy gauntlet, right? But so I didn't look this up before we started recording. Can you name me another resume that is, I mean, we've said a lot. That may be top billing.
So I'm going to tell you, so I'm on Tapology.com. I like Tapology because they show the canceled bouts as well. So check this out. We just named those. We just named all those fights that he fought, right? Now let me go through guys that he was linked to of fights that didn't happen. Shavkat Rakhmonov, Nasruddin Imavov, Dricus du Plessis, Robert Whittaker, Anderson Silva, Donald Cerrone, George Masvidal, Kyle Noak, Matt Brown, Court McGee, Paulo Tiago. Those are all fights that could have happened, that didn't happen, that could have even added to that lore of what he did. I mean, that's insane. In his entire career, I mean, the two that you would struggle, if you're even a halfway fan, I mean, there's two names on his entire resume that you might not know. The rest are all like stalwarts of the promotion and stud. I mean, the dude's a stud. Anybody that knows the game knows what a stud he is and represents him. Now it'll just be a matter of what he wants to do and where he wants to go, you know?
Does his Israel Adesanya fight land him a UFC Hall of Fame spot? Has to, right?
Has to. Yeah, that's a Hall of Fame fight. You know what I mean? Even if you look at his career and say that he's not, a Hall of Famer just on the resume alone, and that would be fair. If you just say, I look at the body of work and it's not a Hall of Fame career to me, I would be okay with that. But that fight, that's in the Hall of Fame for sure, man. And, obviously, Israel Adesanya does a lot of that credit as well. I mean, that reading his lips at the start of the 5th round when he's like, I'm ready to die. Like, oh, God, like, oh, chills, dude, because he ain't just saying something, like he means it. Those two dudes went to war, man. That's a Hall of Fame fight for sure.
So before we get going, getting set, ready to wrap things up here on Cageside with John Morgan, but I got to go back to what was it? 2012, 2013, when the Ultimate Fighter season 17 Tough was, that he ended up winning. He was the last pick to a team. And I don't know why I remember this, but his first fight was against the #1 ranked guy on the opposing team. And it was a Jackson Wink guy that they all pegged was going to be the winner of the show. Do you remember this?
I forgot his run, to be honest. I just remember that. I do remember that he was the last pick because I remember going, yeah. So, I wrote him off.
So I grew up in Arizona, Mesa, Arizona. And Yuma is on the border of basically Arizona and Nevada, right? So anyways, my girlfriend at the time was over watching it. She's now my wife. She was like, oh, this kid's going to get killed. I said, and I remember saying this. I said, this kid's from Yuma, Arizona. Though they only breed two things, farmers or wrestlers. And these, like I'm telling you, this Hispanic community coming, they are some of the tough. I played and wrestled and did everything against them. Ironically, we were 4 hours apart, but they were in my same, his school was in my same division. So I played them every year. They are the toughest sons of bitches you will ever meet in Yuma, Arizona. Cain Velasquez from Yuma, Arizona.
Yep.
Okay. So I said, this kid's from Yuma. He's going to win this fight. He ended up winning that fight against the #1 ranked guy team on the Ultimate Fighter, goes on and beats Uriah Hall, who Chael Sonnen said could beat Anderson Silva right then and there. So, and Uriah Hall was picked to be like the next big thing coming into the coming off the Ultimate Fighter. And Kelvin Gastelum beats him in the finale. Kelvin Gastelum, man, I take my hat off to you. Whatever you decide you want to do, you deserve it.
That is well said, man. That dude is a stud. And I think it's important, man, to remember things like that and to tell stories like that, because I know there are so many new fans of sport. And I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, if you don't know the history, you don't belong here. No, welcome all the new fans on, man. If you're just watching for the first time, awesome, man. Come learn about it. But it's cool to tell stories like that, to remind people like that of where, because maybe they've only seen a couple losses from some guy and they don't know the history and they don't know where that person came from and what all they've accomplished.
The youngest competitor on the show too. I don't even think he was 21 yet. He was 20 years old.
He was a baby. I'm telling you, I wrote that dude off completely. Wrote him off. I was like, this dude doesn't have a chance. Sure enough, man, that dude's a stud, man. Absolute legend. So respect to you for showing that respect. Hell
yeah. Respect burger, man. So this weekend coming up, we got a couple events, not a lot of high profile or high, big marquee fights, but we do have another Apex show, a show that was supposed to be in Singapore, I believe, got moved to the Apex. And then we do have Amazon, a one championship on Amazon Prime, but no MMA.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? So you touched on it. First of all, the UFC card on Saturday, that'll be at the Apex. That was supposed to be in Shanghai, China. So it wasn't a huge high-profile card. So still a really good main event. Song Yadong versus Chris Gutierrez. That is going to be a fantastic bantamweight fight. It's two ranked fighters, two guys that are, both kind of on the way up. So that should be a really, really exciting fight. The co-main event, Anthony Smith versus Khalil Roundtree Jr. Not sure how long that'll last, but that should be amazing. As well. So top two, and then outside of that, it's kind of takes a step down here and there, but you do have some prospects on there. This is
a road to the Octagon card.
Exactly. Well, it was supposed to be, and then they're not going to do it. They pushed that back, and so because they want to do it over in Asia. So there are some prospects on it that came from the show. So again, it's going to be kind of one of those ones, kind of that next generation. But I think those top two fights are really good. But yeah, you touched on it. One championship as well. They're back on Amazon Prime Video on Friday night. It's interesting. There's no MMA, so people might say, well, you're an MMA show. Like, but why are you going to tell me about this card that has no MMA on it? Now, One Championship does this thing where they feature Muay Thai and kickboxing and submission grappling and MMA. So MMA is just a part of what they offer. This particular card, and to be honest with you, I don't know why they decided this, but it's an all Muay Thai card. But the thing is, they do Muay Thai in MMA gloves. So if you're somebody, so it's like if you love the stand-up game, but you're like, I don't know, some of the groundwork and stuff like that. I don't really know that. I'm still learning that. I don't really understand it. Well, they got a card for you on Amazon Prime, right? And I'm pretty sure in this year, 2023, most people have Amazon Prime. So if you haven't been watching TV on it, because I don't watch a lot of TV on it, to be honest with you, but if you have Amazon Prime, you have this subscription that you can log into, and they do a great job of when you log in. You don't even have to search for it, man. When it's live on Friday night, it'll just be right there when you tune in. It'll be right there on top. So, it's going to be full of some names that you probably don't know, to be honest with you. You probably know nothing about. But you can expect fireworks, man, because it is legitimate strikers fighting in small gloves. It'll be a lot of fun.
Awesome. How did the boy do at the soccer tournament this past weekend?
Didn't advance out of the group stage, didn't get the results that we were hoping for. We had to play Bullhead City, Arizona, by the way. That was my first time in Bullhead City. Nice host fields, though. I want to give the town of Bullhead City, man. They had some really nice grass out there.
You would have known in a drought.
Oh, I had no idea, man, but they had a nice field. So we didn't get out of the group stage, unfortunately, but we had fun. It was a team of scrap. They had a good season. You could have built a movie around this team. They were scrappy underdogs that finished in like 5th place in the regular season. They had to play in the play-in game just to get to the playoffs in our local area, but they won that. And then the next week they had to play a team that had beat them 2 weeks earlier, destroyed them 2 weeks earlier, and shut them out. They beat them to advance all the way to the finals and qualify for the regional. So, they were a bunch of scrappy underdogs that never quit. They fought to the end, but it was fun. It was the first time Eli had been able to have one of these like travel tournaments and go out of town and hang out with the team. We all had dinner together over the weekend, in between the days. So it was a lot of fun. We didn't get the results we hoped for, but we had a good time.
Our own little giants.
That's it. You know what I mean? They were counted out, but they didn't take no for an answer. They battled all the way through. Who doesn't love a good underdog story, right? Didn't finish off with the glory that we might have hoped for, but who doesn't love a good underdog story?
Well, UFC in Austin was as delivered. It was a great card, a lot of controversy coming out of it. I don't know. We gave you our opinion. Arman, what's next for him? We shall wait and see, because that's a problem. The top of that division. Man, fun, exciting times. Next week, I don't know how much we're going to break down the Prime card or the UFC card, but you know what we are going to do? We are going to preview UFC 296 from a sold-out T-Mobile Arena, headlining the card. Colby, Chaos, Covington versus Headshot Dead Leon Edwards. Man, I'm looking forward to this card. We're going to break it all down. You got any last parting words for us?
No, I'm glad that you teased UFC 296 because it is going to be fireworks. It is going to be a drama-filled fight week. You can count on that. So I absolutely cannot wait for it. Schedule gets, I got a CFFC next week as well, but I'll be back. I'm doing Atlantic City on Friday night, and I'm heading out early. Probably team no sleep, you know what I'm saying? Straight to the airport, because I will not miss UFC 296. As much as I will not miss CFFC, because I love being on the mic for those. I believe CM Punk will be there with me as well, even though that's what I heard. The last I heard, he was going to be there. I mean, back with WWE, but still got that love for CFFC. But I'm getting on the plane bright and early so I can be back on Saturday for 296, because that is going to be fireworks.
Well, with that said, for John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. Enjoy the fights.